The 6:47 train from downtown Chicago to Oak Park was never on time. This was a fact that every regular commuter on that line had accepted the way people accept weather, not happily, not without complaint, but with the particular resignation of someone who has stopped believing that protest changes anything. The train was late on Mondays because of scheduling. It was late on Tuesdays because of something else. On Fridays, it was late for reasons that nobody at the transit authority had ever successfully explained, and nobody had ever been satisfied by. On the Thursday evening in November that this story begins, the 6:47 was 11 minutes late, which was actually better than average. And when it finally pulled into the Madison Street station with its particular mechanical groan and the rush of cold air that always preceded the opening doors, 43 people pushed forward simultaneously in the way that cold and lateness and the end of a long workday make people push. Marcus Webb was not a pusher. He had never been a pusher. He was 31 years old, a structural engineer at a mid-sized firm in the Loop, and he had been taking this exact train home for 4 years without ever once pushing. He waited. He let people go ahead of him. He had been told by exactly 3 different colleagues at exactly 3 different points in his career that this quality would be a problem for him professionally, that the world rewarded people who pushed, that waiting was just another word for losing. He had listened to all 3 of them politely and continued waiting anyway. He was the last person to board the 6:47 that Thursday evening, which meant, as he stepped into the second car and looked down the length of it at the packed, standing passengers and the full seats, that the only empty seat left was the one he was already standing beside. He sat down. He opened his book. He had been reading for approximately 4 minutes when the doors opened at the next stop, and she got on. He noticed her the way you notice something that requires your attention before your brain has finished deciding to pay it. She was somewhere in her late 20s, wearing a long gray coat that had been buttoned wrong, one button off, the whole coat slightly crooked, and she was carrying 2 bags, one on each shoulder and a tote bag in her left hand, and she was very visibly, unmistakably, considerably pregnant. She was also, Marcus noticed immediately, not finding a seat. There were no seats. Every seat in the car was occupied. The standing area was packed with people holding poles and phones and the blank expressions of the deeply commuted. She made her way slowly down the aisle, both bags shifting with the movement of the train, her left hand moving from pole to pole, her face carrying the specific expression of a person who is not going to ask for help, but is also not entirely sure they are going to be fine. Marcus stood up. He did it before he thought about it, which was the only way he ever did things that mattered quickly, before the part of his brain that calculated social awkwardness could weigh in. He stood up, stepped into the aisle, and said to her simply, "Please take this seat." She looked at him. She had dark eyes and the kind of face that looked like it was usually more composed than it currently was. There were shadows under her eyes that spoke of weeks rather than one bad night. She was wearing one earring. He noticed this without mentioning it. "I'm fine," she said, the automatic response of someone who has been told their whole life not to be a burden. "I know," Marcus said, "but I've been sitting for 8 hours and my back is actually grateful for the excuse. Please." She looked at him for one more moment. Then she sat down. She arranged her bags with the practiced efficiency of someone who had been navigating the world with extra weight for months. She let out a breath that was not quite a sigh, but contained all the components of one. She looked up at Marcus standing in the aisle above her and said, "Thank you, really." "It's a seat," Marcus said and smiled and opened his book standing up. She laughed. Small, surprised, genuine, that was the whole conversation. 3 stops later, she got off at Harlem Avenue, both bags over her shoulders, tote bag in hand, moving through the doors with the careful deliberateness of a woman who had learned to navigate everything carefully and deliberately. Marcus sat back down. He finished his book. He got off at Oak Park. He did not think about it again. Her name was Diana Reyes. She was 28 years old, a 5th grade teacher at Jefferson Elementary School in Oak Park, Illinois. And she was 7 months pregnant with a daughter she had already named Sophia, after her grandmother, who had come from Oaxaca with $40 and a suitcase, and had built something from nothing with a stubbornness that Diana had inherited completely. The father of the baby was not in the picture. This was not a tragedy in Diana's accounting of her own life, though other people seemed to feel it should be. It was simply a fact, one of many facts, like the fact that she was 3 months behind on her car payment, and the fact that her feet had swollen to a size that made her regular shoes unwearable, and the fact that she had been standing in that train car for 11 minutes before the man stood up, and none of the 12 other seated passengers had moved. She had noticed that, the 12 other passengers. She had counted. She had not been angry about it, exactly. She had been tired in a way that went past the body into something deeper, the tiredness of a person who has been managing everything alone for long enough that they have started to forget what it felt like not to. And then a man had stood up. He had not made a production of it. He had not announced it. He had not looked around to see if anyone was watching him be kind. He had simply stood up and offered her a seat as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world, which it was, and which it also, on that particular evening, was not. She thought about it on the walk home from the Harlem Avenue station. The way he had said it's a seat and smiled. The uncomplicated ease of it.
It's easing up
She had
now.
been carrying so much for so long that the weight of one small kindness, offered simply and without expectation, undid something in her chest that she had not known was wound so tight. She cried a little on the walk home, not from sadness, from something she did not have a precise word for. Relief, maybe. The specific relief of being seen, briefly, by a stranger who asked nothing in return. Sophia kicked twice on the walk home, which Diana took as commentary. Sophia Reyes was born on a Tuesday in January at Northwestern Memorial Hospital, in a delivery that lasted 14 hours and was, by any objective medical measure, completely unremarkable.
Based on this diagram,
By every
you
other
can
measure,
explain
it was the
process.
most remarkable thing that had ever happened.
That's right, but let's be more
Diana's
specific
mother
about
flew
the
in from
stages.
Phoenix and stayed for 3 weeks. Her colleague and best friend Patris, who taught fourth grade across the hall and had the specific gift of appearing with food at exactly the right moment, appeared with food at exactly the right moment for 6 consecutive weekends. Diana went back to teaching in March,
great first
Sophia
day,
in
sweetie.
daycare 3
I love
blocks from the
you.
school, and began the particular daily logistics of a working single mother with the same stubbornness her grandmother had brought from Oaxaca. She did not think about the man on the train, not specifically, but somewhere in the way she moved through the world after Sophia was born, something had shifted. A small recalibration of what she believed people were capable of. A single data point that she had filed away without knowing she had filed it. Sometimes a stranger
be
simply
okay.
stands up. The years
it feels
pass
like a
the
lot
way
right
years
now,
pass
but
when you are too
you're
busy
doing
to
great.
watch them. Sophia at 2, terrorizing the daycare with her opinions. Sophia at 4, already reading chapter books and explaining their plots to Diana with the
finish the math
thoroughness
homework
of
yet?
someone who assumes the
almost done
listener
with the
has
last
not
section.
read the book and probably should have. Sophia at 6, starting first grade at Jefferson Elementary, which was where Diana taught, which Sophia found simultaneously wonderful and professionally complicated.
Over here.
Diana was 35 now.
That's the last
She had
slice.
been
Are you gonna eat
promoted
that?
to department
I don't
head.
want the salad.
She had paid off the car. She had not started dating again, not because she had decided not to, but because there was always something that needed doing, and the part of her that had once been lonely had been so thoroughly occupied by Sophia that she had largely forgotten to maintain it. She was, by her own accounting,
you have to
genuinely
carry it here
happy.
first,
Not
and
the
then you
performed
start-
happiness
Oh,
of someone
okay, so
convincing
9. I
themselves.
get it now,
The
thanks.
real kind. The kind that exists alongside hard things without requiring the hard things to disappear. The transfer notice came in October, 7 years after the train. A new student, joining her 5th grade
Welcome.
class
Please have a
mid-semester.
seat. Thank you for
The
coming in
boy's
tonight.
family had just moved to Oak Park from the city. His file said he was quiet, academically strong, had tested 2 years ahead in reading. His name was James.
My apologies for
James
being late.
Webb.
I promise it
Diana
won't
wrote the
happen
name
again.
in her attendance book without particular
interrupting
attention
anything
to it.
important?
Webb was not an uncommon name. She had taught 3 Webbs in 11 years of teaching. James arrived on a Monday morning in October wearing a gray hoodie and carrying a backpack that was slightly too large for him, and looking at the classroom with the specific careful assessment of a child
He's
who
been
has learned to
struggling with the
read
recent
rooms
assignments,
before committing to
particularly
them.
in math.
Diana
I see.
crouched down to his level.
there anything
She always
specific I
did
can
this
do to
with
help
new
him at home?
students. a habit she had developed in her first year of teaching, and said, "I'm Ms. Reyes. I'm glad you're here, James. We're going to have a good year." James looked at her with dark, serious eyes that seemed to be processing something beyond the words. "Okay," he said, not rudely, simply, the response of a child who means what he says and says what he means. Diana smiled and thought, "This one is going to be interesting." She was right.
This approach offers the only real solution moving forward. I've made my decision.
We reviewed the projections, and the numbers don't align with the initial assessment.
In fact, we found several discrepancies that suggest
James Webb was, within 3 weeks, the best reader in the class, not performatively. He did not wave his hand or compete for recognition. He simply read everything placed in front of him with a completeness of attention that Diana recognized from her best students over the years. The ones who were not just reading the words, but living inside them temporarily. He was also, she noticed, the child other children came to when something was wrong.
7 years.
Not the most popular child, not the loudest, but the one who was always present in the right way at the right moment. A girl in the class cried one Tuesday because she had left her lunch at home, and James had quietly split his sandwich with her before Diana had even registered what was happening. A boy was having trouble with a math concept, and James had sat beside him for 20 minutes explaining it in a different way, until the boy's face changed from confusion to understanding. He did these things without announcing them, without looking around to see if anyone had noticed. Diana watched him and felt something she could not immediately locate, a recognition of something, a familiarity that she could not source. Parent-teacher conferences were in November. Diana had 40 minutes per family, scheduled back-to-back in her classroom after school. She had done 11 years of these conferences and had developed the particular skill of delivering honest assessments of children to their parents in ways that felt like collaboration rather than judgment. The Webb appointment was at 4:20. At 4:21, a man knocked on her open classroom door. He was in his late 30s, wearing a dark jacket, carrying a messenger bag, slightly out of breath in the way of someone who had come from work directly without time to change. He had dark eyes and a careful way of moving into a space, as if he was always slightly aware of taking up the right amount of room and not more. "Ms. Reyes, I'm Marcus Webb, James's dad. I'm sorry if I'm a little late, the train." Diana stood up from behind her desk. She looked at him. "The train," he had said, and something in the architecture of her memory, filed away for 7 years without her knowledge, opened like a door. Dark eyes, a book held standing up, it's a seat, a smile. She stood very still for a moment. "Mr. Webb," she said, her voice was completely steady. "Please sit down." He sat. He looked at her with a slight expression of a person who has noticed something but cannot identify what. "James is one of the most remarkable students I've taught in 11 years, Diana said, because this was true, and because she needed a moment to arrange herself inside what she had just understood. Marcus's face did what parents' faces do when they hear something true and good about their child. It opened completely, every guard down, pure and uncomplicated gratitude. "He's a good kid," Marcus said, simply. The same register as his son. The same quality of saying what was true without ornamentation. They talked about James for 35 minutes. His reading, his way of being present with other children, the particular quality of his attention. Diana told Marcus the story of the sandwich. Marcus listened with the focused attention of a father who is always gathering data about who his son is becoming. At the end of the 35 minutes, Diana looked at Marcus Webb across the classroom desk and made a decision. "Can I ask you something unrelated to James?" Marcus looked slightly surprised. "Of course. 7 years ago," Diana said. "November, the 6:47 train from downtown, Madison Street Station." Marcus looked at her. Something moved across his face, the slow arrival of a memory. "You were the last person on," Diana said. "The train was packed. I got on 3 stops later. I was 7 months pregnant. There were no seats." Marcus was completely still. "You stood up," Diana said. "You said you'd been sitting all day and your back needed the excuse. You said," she paused, smiled. "You said it's a seat." Marcus stared at her. "That's you," he said. His voice was quiet. "That's me," Diana said. The classroom was very quiet. Outside the window, The November afternoon had gone dark early, the way it does in Chicago in November, and the classroom lights were the warm institutional
Please, ma'am,
yellow of
take my
every
seat.
school classroom everywhere.
Thank you very much, young
I think
man.
about that sometimes, Diana said. I don't know if you know this, but I had been standing for 11 minutes. I counted the people who didn't stand up. There were 12 of them. She paused. I wasn't angry. I had been managing everything alone for a long time, and I was very tired that night. And then you stood up. And you made it. She stopped, tried to find the right word. Ordinary, you made it ordinary. Like it was just what people did. Marcus was looking at her with an expression she could not fully read. Sophia, Diana said. My daughter, she's 7 now, she is. She laughed, a small surprised sound. She's a lot. She has opinions about everything. She reads constantly. She explained the entire plot of Charlotte's Web to me last week as if I had never heard of it. Marcus smiled. It was the same smile.
See? The
7
equation
years
goes here,
later,
not
the
there.
same
Oh,
uncomplicated
okay.
smile.
So I multiply this
I'm glad,
first.
he said. I'm really glad. I never got to say thank you properly, Diana said. At the time the train moved on. You said thank you, Marcus said. I said thank you really, Diana said. Which is not the same as what I actually meant. Marcus looked at her across the desk in the yellow classroom light. What did you actually mean? He asked. Diana thought about the walk home from Harlem Avenue Station in November 7 years ago. The cold, the weight of the bags, Sophia kicking twice. The thing that had unwound in her chest
sit
when a
right here.
stranger simply
Thanks so
stood up.
much.
I meant, she said, that I had forgotten that people did that. Just did things, without being asked, without making it complicated. I had been alone with everything for long enough that I had started to think that was just how it was. She paused,
Welcome home,
and then you
sweetie.
stood up and it reminded
Dinner's
me that
almost
it
ready.
wasn't.
Oh,
That people
finally.
sometimes
I'm
people just
starving.
stand up. The classroom was
finished my
quiet.
homework and cleaned my
Marcus
room,
Webb,
so I could
structural
get dessert
engineer,
before dinner.
father of James,
That is a
38
compelling
years old,
argument.
looked at Diana Ray's
finally
across a
found her,
5th grade
Diana.
classroom in Oak Park, Illinois,
Your sister
and
is
felt something that he
alive and she wants
recognized
to
as the
see you.
sensation of understanding why a thing had happened. Not everything happened for a reason. He did not believe that particularly. But some things, sometimes, turned out to have been going somewhere without anyone navigating. His mother, Marcus said carefully. James's mother. She passed away 4 years ago. He stopped, started again. James is very much like her, the way he just does things without making a production of it. I know, Diana said softly. I see it every day. They sat in the yellow classroom light. Can I ask you something? Marcus said. Yes. The seat, he said. On the train, I don't remember making a decision about it. I just stood up. I've thought about that since you said it. I don't remember deciding. Diana nodded. That's exactly it, she said. That's exactly what it was. You didn't decide, you just did it. That's the part I couldn't forget. They had coffee the following Saturday. Not a date exactly. Or not only a date. Something that was also a conversation that needed to continue. A thread that had been left hanging for 7 years and had turned out to be attached to something. They met at a cafe on Lake Street, and Marcus brought James, and Diana brought Sophia. And the two children regarded each other with the mutual assessment of children who have been told they might have something in common and are reserving judgment. Within 20 minutes, Sophia had explained the plot of 2 books to James, and James had listened to both of them with complete attention, and then said, "Have you read The Phantom Toll Booth?" Sophia had not. James had a copy in his backpack. He gave it to her. Diana and Marcus watched this from across the table with the particular expression of parents witnessing their children do something that reflects the best version of themselves. He gives things away, Marcus said quietly. I don't know where he got it. Diana looked at Marcus Webb across the cafe table. I think I might know, she said. That was 4 years ago. Sophia is 11 now. She has read The Phantom Toll Booth 4 times and keeps James's copy on her shelf, even though they have bought her own. When asked why, she says it was the first book a friend ever gave her, and that matters.
I still can't
James
believe
is
how much
also
has
11.
changed.
He is still the
I
best
know,
reader in his class.
but we're still here
He still
together in
splits
our home.
things without being asked. Last spring, he spent 3 weeks helping a classmate prepare for a reading test, every day at lunch, never mentioning it to anyone. And when the classmate passed, James's only response was to go back to eating his sandwich. He does not know the story of the train. He will, someday. Diana and Marcus have decided to tell him when he is older, when he can understand the full shape of it. The way a single moment, made without decision, without audience, without any knowledge of its own consequence, can travel forward through years and arrive somewhere neither person could have predicted. Marcus and Diana were married on a Saturday in June, 3 years after the parent-teacher conference. It was a small wedding, Oak Park. The cafe on Lake Street provided the cake because it seemed right. Sophia and James stood together in the front row. Sophia in a yellow dress she had chosen herself because she said yellow was the color of things that were going to be fine. James in a dark suit that was slightly too formal for an 11-year-old, and which he wore with complete seriousness. When the officiant asked if anyone had anything to say, Sophia raised her hand. Everyone laughed. Sophia, unfazed, said, "I just want to say that my mom told me about the train, and I think it's important. Because my mom said she had forgotten that people do things. And then somebody did a thing, and now we're here." She sat back down. James, beside her, nodded once as if this had been a satisfactory summary. Marcus looked at Diana. Diana looked at Marcus. The cafe owner, who had come to watch from the back, wiped her eyes with her apron. Marcus still takes the train. Not the 6, 47 anymore. His office moved 3 years ago, different line. But he takes the train every morning and every evening. And he has a habit that his colleagues find slightly puzzling, and that he has never fully explained. He never sits down until he has looked at everyone standing. It is not a dramatic gesture. It is not performed. He does not announce it or look around to see if anyone notices. He simply looks, the way he looked on that Thursday evening in November 11 years ago without knowing he was looking. And if anyone is standing who should not have to be standing, he stands up. He has done this so consistently for so long that it has stopped being a decision. It is simply what he does, like breathing, like showing up, like the kind of thing that good people do without needing to be told that it matters, without needing to be present for the consequences, without knowing that somewhere down the line, 7 years down the line, 11 years, 20, the simple fact of having stood up is still traveling forward, arriving in places they will never see, changing things they will never know they changed. Sophia knows the story now. She is in 6th grade. She is reading at a 10th grade level. She has opinions about everything and delivers them with her grandmother's oak-sacken stubbornness and her mother's precise, warm clarity. She is going to be, by every indication available, formidable. Last month she came home from school and told Diana that a girl in her class had been standing in the lunch line for a long time with her tray because there were no empty seats at any table and nobody was moving. "What did you do?" Diana asked. Sophia looked at her mother with an expression of mild surprise that the question needed to be asked. "I moved over," she said. Diana looked at her daughter. "Good," she said. Sophia went to do her homework. Diana stood in the kitchen for a moment, thinking about a Thursday evening in November 11 years ago, and a man standing up in a train car without deciding to, and a walk home in the cold, and 2 kicks from a daughter who was not yet born, and the long thread of ordinary kindness that runs through years and lives and generations, without anyone holding the spool, connecting things that were never meant to be connected, and making them, quietly and permanently, whole. She thought about her grandmother, $40 and a suitcase, building something from nothing. She thought about Marcus, standing in a train car with his book, doing the most ordinary thing in the world as if it were the most ordinary thing in the world. She thought about James giving Sophia a book in a cafe on a Saturday morning, not knowing he was giving her the first gift that a friend had ever given her. She thought about Sophia moving over in a lunch line without needing to be asked, without looking around to see if anyone noticed, without making it anything other than what it was. A seat, she thought. It's just a seat. And look what it built. Some kindnesses are loud. They announce themselves. They require witnesses. They happen at the right moment with the right people watching, and they become stories that get told at dinners and posted on the internet and remembered publicly. And some kindnesses are quiet. They happen in train cars at the end of long days when nobody is watching, and the person doing them doesn't think about it twice. And the person receiving them carries it for 7 years without knowing why, and passes it to a daughter who passes it to a lunch line. And the thread keeps going, invisible and unannounced.